Yeah, am I audible to you? A very good afternoon to one and all. Yes, am I audible? Okay, today we are going to discuss about the fifth semester subject geology. So here, structural geology. Today we are going to discuss about the paper structural geology. So in this, by studying the structural geology, the student can able to learn. So what is structural geology? So what are the importance and objectives, and what are the interrelationship with other branches of geology? So what is the major applications and etc. The things we would like to learn from the studying of structural geology. So here, so generally in this first chapter, first unit, structural geology introduction part. So in this first chapter, first unit, structural geology. So what are the major topics which you are going to cover in this first unit? So what is the major objectives of structural geology, and introduction about structural geology, the primary and secondary structures, and methods of structural geology, and what are the applications of structural geology, and structural geology and its relation to other branches of geology. So these are the things which are covered in this first unit. Okay. So what is the major objectives of the structural geology? So generally, after studying this unit, the student can able to explain so the primary and secondary structures, and the student can able to explain methods of structural geology. The student can able to describe applications of structural geology, and structural geology and its relationship with other branches of geology. So these are the major objectives of structural geology. So here, what is it mean by structural geology? What is the definition? What it really deals? So generally, structural geology defined as the study of the structural features of rocks, their geological or geographical distribution, and their causes is known as structural geology. So structural geology is one of the branches of geology, okay, like petrology, stratigraphy, paleontology, hydrogeology, engineering geology. Like there are several branches in geology. Like structural geology, also one of the branches of geology. So structural geology is a study of structural features, structural features of a rock and their geographical distribution and their causes. So it means the study of structural features. What are the structural features of rocks and their geographical distribution? How they are distributed in the field? It may be in the earth crust, and their causes. What are the causes which results these structures? Okay, so these are the things which you are going to learn from this unit. So, generally, according to Billings, one of the geologists, MP Billings. So, according to Billings, defines as the study of architecture, the study of architecture of the earth crust as it has resulted from deformation. So, the definition according to Billings, the study of architecture of the earth crust. Okay, the study of architecture of the earth crust. As we know, interior of the earth, we have majorly three layers: crust, mantle, and core. So uppermost surface is the crust. So whatever the rock structures or whatever the behavioral features which is present in the crust, so these features or these whatever the characteristic behavior of rocks can be studied. That is why the architecture of the earth crust, as it has resulted from the deformation. So we should have to learn about, we should know what is deformation. So generally we are seeing the formation, geological formations, sedimentary formations. So like we are generally hearing the words. But what does it mean by deformation? So formation is a process of forming the either mineral or any rock in a earth crust by various process. If it is a magma, if it is a igneous rocks, magmatic process. If it is a sedimentary rock, sedimentary process. If it is a metamorphic process, metamorphic rock, metamorphic process. So whatever the process which results to form the any strata or any rock, that is called formation. Okay, being certain time. So it is a formation of process of rocks or minerals or any lithological units. Okay, this is formation. So coming to deformation, deformation is a process of which is going to be disturbed, which is existed or which is previously existed. So deformation is a process of disturbing the earlier lithological units. It is going to disturb, it is going to be making the variations, or it is going to be reconstruct, okay, of earlier lithological units or earlier formations or pre-existing formations is called deformation. Means already which are earlier formed rocks, it is a process of changing their attitude, changing their earlier formation or earlier structure. So it means it is going to reconstruct by various other geological forces which are involved in this, in this to bring such type of marked changes in the earlier formations. That is called deformation. Okay. So according to Billings, it is a study of architecture of the earth crust as it has resulted from the deformation. So these structural changes or structural features are developed in the rocks because of the resulted deformation activities. So generally the structural geology aim at understanding and interpreting the form, symmetry, geometry, and certainly the elegance and artistic of assembling of the components of the earth crust on all scales. So generally the structural geology aim, so the structural geology aim at to understand, to understanding and interpreting. So after understanding we have to interpret, we have to describe, interpreting the form, symmetry, geometry, and certainly the elegance and its artistic assembling of the components of the earth crust on all scales. Means scale in the sense their diameters, their length, their width, what is the rock structures or rock behaviors, their parameters, their length and width. So in all scales, for example, geologists are concerned with structural features which range in size from those observed in a outcrop to those of regional size, which are to be represented on geological or structural maps. So the geologists are mostly concerned with the structural features which range in size from those observed in an outcrop. So what does it mean by outcrop? Any rock which is exposed on the earth surface. So any rock body or any lithological unit which is going to expose, which is appeared on the earth surface, which is exposed on the earth surface, which is called as an outcrop. So outcrop we can able to see on the surface of the earth. That is outcrop. So what we measured in an outcrop to those of regional size, which are to be represented to those of regional size on geological, so to be represented on geological or structural maps. So these scales should be represented in on a geological map or in a structural maps. Okay, so features of still a large scale are considered in tectonics. So for example, the coming to size variations, the wide variations are there. Even the too big, in the sense, in the large or in the broader manner. So if it is still large scale, are considered in the tectonics, which is the study of the features of much broader or larger components of the earth and their causes. So tectonic is the study of the features of much broader or larger components of the earth and their causes. So in this branch of tectonics, in this sub branch, we can able to study the a much broader or larger components of the earth and their causes we are going to discuss. If it is too large, if it is too large scale, then we can study it under the tectonics. So generally, so these are the major whatever the approach towards the structural geology, we can able to understand. So what are the major criteria to understand the structural geology? Okay, so in order to maintain all these things, we can able to understand in a broad manner also, in a broad process. So how it has been resulted from since from long years, over a long period of time, how it has been resulted such a characteristic features which has been able to form. So whatever the structures we are able to see right now and earlier, is that structures are there or not. So these are things when we are enter into the field, we can able to understand in a physical approach. Next, structures of rocks. So generally, structures are broadly two types. One is primary structures and another one is secondary structures. Structures are broadly classified into two types. They are, one is primary structures and another one is secondary structures. So generally, a structural feature is one produced in the rock by movements after the formation or after the consolidation of rock or rock units. Understand? A structural feature is one produced in the rock, a structural feature which is produced in the rock by movements after its formation. By movements after its formation or after the consolidation. So generally, the structural feature is produced in the rock by movements after its formation or after the consolidation of the rock or rock units. So generally, the term structural feature or simply structures refers to the shape and attitude of the various rock units present in any part of the earth. So generally, the term structural features are simply, we can say even structures also, structures of rocks. Okay. So the term structural features or simply we can say structures refers to the shape and attitude of the various rock units. So it represents the shape and attitude of the various rock units present in any part of the earth. So in any part of the earth, whatever the shape of that rock, whatever the attitude of that rock, so these are the features which are termed or which are considered under the structures. So structures that originate during the formation of rocks. Structures that are originate during the formation of rocks either through depositional process in the case of sedimentary rocks, okay, or through emplacement and crystallization in the case of igneous rocks are called primary structures. So structures that are originate during the formation of rocks. So structures that are originate during the formation of rocks, either through either through depositional process in the case of sedimentary rocks, or through emplacement and crystallization in the case of igneous rocks are called primary structures. As I said, structures are broadly two types: primary structures and secondary structures. So what are the primary structures? Structures that are originate during the rock formation of So generally during the formation of rock, either through depositional process in the case of sedimentary rock. So as we came to know that sediment rocks, how they are formed, what is the nature of formation. So generally the sediment rocks are formed by the weathering of pre-existing rocks. So weathering takes place on pre-existing rocks, and erosion, transportation by geological agents, and deposition in the low-lying areas, okay, in swampy regions, and after compaction and diagenesis and lithification, the sediment rocks are resulted. So the resulted rocks are called as sediment rocks. So either through depositional process in the case of igneous rocks, or the emplacement and crystallization in the case of igneous rocks. So as we know very well, the process of formation of igneous rocks is crystallization of magma or crystallization of lava, so or consolidation of magmatic material, so leads to igneous rocks. So if the igneous rocks, emplacement and crystallization in the case of igneous rocks, okay, in the case of igneous rocks are called primary structures. So it means simply we can define that primary structures are the structures which are originate during the formation of rocks, okay, during the formation of rocks, which means depositional process of while formation of sediment rock, or emplacement and recrystallization of igneous rocks. In the case of igneous rocks, these are the during the process of what you can call it as what you can say primary structures. Okay, so in this time, if the rocks are formed while at the same time the structures are takes place while during the formation of rock, then we can call it as primary structures. Okay, generally while the structures produced subsequently, if the structures are produced subsequently in the consolidated rocks, if the structures are produced subsequently in the consolidated rocks by forces that tend to displace and destroy the rocks, or by metamorphism, are called secondary structures. So what are the secondary structures? Secondary structures are the structures which are produced subsequently in the consolidated rocks. The structures are produced subsequently in the consolidated rocks by forces. How? By forces that tend to displace and destroy the rocks, or by metamorphism, are called secondary structures. Okay. So it means simply we can say the secondary structures are the structures which are formed after the consolidation of rocks. After the consolidation of rocks by forces. So that tend to be a displacement. We can see the displacement in the existed rocks, or that tend to be destroyed in the existed rocks. Such structures we can call it as secondary structures. Okay. So the latter are resulted, the latter, whatever the structures which we are call it as secondary structures, these are structures later or resulted the essential of deformational process. So these secondary structures mostly the latter or resulted, the latter or resulted essential of a deformational process. So deformational process such as upliftment, tilting, faulting, and folding. So these are the major deformational processes. So these are the essential of deformational process such upliftment, tilting, faulting, and folding are the deformational process. So certain deformational structures may, however, develop in sediments before the sediments are hardened into rock. So generally, certain deformational structures may, however, develop in sedimentary rocks, develop in sediments before the sediments are hardened into rock or lithification, or in igneous rock before they are completely solidified. Before they are completely solidified. Such structures which are connected with the later stages of the formative process. So the rocks are usually designated from the primary structures and are termed as Pino-contemporaneous structures. Pino-contemporaneous structures. So this is slight different. This is slight distinguished from the primary structures. So primary structures are the structures which are produced during the formation of rock. But here, so this is resulted. This type of structures are developed in sediments before the sediments are hardened into rock. In the case of sediment rocks, before the sediments are hardened into rock. If it is igneous rocks, which are completely before they completely solidified. Before they completely solidified. In all the cases, we can see a very slight variation. That is why these structures are called as Pino-contemporaneous structures. Pino-contemporaneous structures. So Pino-contemporaneous structures are the form towards the process of formation. The later stage of the completionment are usually distinguished from the primary structures and are termed as Pino-contemporaneous structures. Because generally such structures which are connected with the later stages of the formative process. So later stages of the formative process of the rocks. Later stages of the formative process of the rocks which are called contemporaneous. So Pino-contemporaneous structures. So this is very a little bit distinguishing from primary structures. So generally structures are broadly two types: primary structures and secondary structures. Primary structures are the structures which are originate during the formation of rock. Okay, it may be sedimentary or igneous rocks. So during the depositional process of sedimentary rocks, these structures are takes place in the sediments, that is primary structures. So if the structures are takes place during the magmatic crystallization towards the formation of magmatic rocks, so whatever the structures are developed, that structures are also belongs to primary structures. So secondary structures are the structures which are produced subsequently after consolidation of the rock. Subsequently after consolidation of the rock by forces. Okay, by forces mostly. So these structures, we can call it as types of structures, primary structures and secondary structures. Then objectives and methods of structural geology. So what is objectives and methods of structural geology? Structural geology is primarily concerned with the recognition, representation, and genetic interpretation. So structural geology primarily concerned with the recognition, means noticing in the field. So we should have to notice, understand. So we should have to notice the structures in the field. So structural geology primarily concerned with the recognition of structures in the field, recognition and representation. After recognition, we need to represent, we need to describe what structures, how it is, so what process it was formed, so what it is else, in all these aspects, the description part or representation part. And a genetic interpretation. And a genetic interpretation is also very, very important. How it was formed. How it was formed. What is the nature of process of demarked changes which you observed in the field. So that is genetic interpretation. We're also able to see. Then genetic interpretation of rock structures. So first of all, it is necessary to study the rock bodies and determine their shape, size, and structural characters. So first of all, it is necessary to study, it is very necessary to study the rock bodies and determine their shape. So first, it is necessary to study the rock bodies. What is that rock body? Is it sedimentary rock body? Is it metamorphic rock body? Is it igneous rock body? So it is, first of all, it is necessary to study the rock bodies and determine their shape. Rock body determine their shape, size, and structural characters. Understand? So it is very necessary to study the rock bodies and determine their shape and size and structural characters. So structure is to be represented by means of maps. Understand? Structures is to be represented by means of maps, cross sections, black diagrams, and photographs. So structures is to be represented by means of maps. The structural geology is going to represent the maps, cross sections, black diagrams, okay, whatever the block diagrams and photographs. For field work and in the preparation of geological maps, for field work and in the preparation of geological maps, topographic maps are used as base maps. So generally for field work and in the preparation of geological maps, topographic maps are used as a base maps. So if you want to prepare a geological maps, so we should use a topographical maps topography. Topography, it represents how the area is look like, their features, the area features, the area attitudes. So for field work and in the preparation of geological maps, topographic maps are used as a base maps. Topographic maps are going to be used as a base map, as a foundation, as a principal maps which are going to be used. So during the field work, as much data as possible is collected. So during the field work, when you enter into the field work to collect the samples, either in rock samples, either in soil samples, either in mineral sample, whatever the samples, whatever your major intention to estimate, okay. So during the field work, as much data as possible is collected and recorded from as many outcrops as possible. So in a field work, in a part of your field work, as much as data you should collect from the field, and also to records from as many outcrops. You should record from as many outcrops as possible. How many outcrops is it possible to see in the field or in your field area? It is better to recognize, it is better to notice, it is better to record in your record book. So the aerial photographs, okay, the aerial photographs and remote sensing through orbiting satellites is being widely employed for obtaining imagery photographic. So aerial photographs, the aerial photographs are the photographs which are taken from the aircraft. Okay. So the aerial photographs and remote sensing, as we know, it is advanced software. And remote sensing through orbital satellites is being widely employed for obtaining imagery photographic. Okay. So these are the major objectives and methods of structural geology generally. So here mostly next applications of structural geology. So what are the applications? So what is a major application of structural geology? How it is going to be utilized, in which respective field we are going to be applying this structural geology knowledge. It is very, very important. So application of structural geology, once you observed, the study of structures is fundamental to the understanding of how crustal rocks have responded to physical processes that have been operating throughout the long geological time. So the study of structures is a fundamental. The study of structures is a fundamental to the understanding. It's a fundamental to the understanding of how the crustal rocks have responded to physical processes that have been operating throughout the long geological time. So throughout the geological time means over a period of long time. So generally, the aerial photographs and remote sensing knowledge are already utilizing for the employing in the study of whatever the field structures or whatever the features. So here, the study of structures is a fundamental to the understanding of how the crustal rocks have responded, how the crustal rocks have responded to physical processes. So how the crustal rocks, how the earth crust rocks are going to be responded to physical processes that have been operating throughout the long geological time. Masses of crustal rocks, masses of crustal rocks from the size of a specks to the size of constituents have been shifted, rotated, uplifted, and destroyed in response to earth forces. So generally, how these crustal rocks are responded to the physical processes over a long period of time, their mass of crustal rocks from the size of specks to the size of continents have been shifted, have been rotated or uplifted and destroyed in response to earth forces, So all these are physical processes which are takes place in the earth or in the earth crust. So these physical processes, how the crustal rocks are going to be affected, how the crustal rocks are going to be changed their pattern, their shape, their attitude. So these are the things which are resulted by the various causes or factors in the earth crust. So generally, these are the various forces which are generated in the earth, and these forces, how the crustal rocks are responds, what changes we can see, what changes it happens. So like that, the structures like faults, folds, joints, cleavage, foliation, and lineation are the abundant in the earth's crust. Mostly the structures which are mostly the faults, folds, joints, unconformities, cleavages, foliation, lineation are the abundant structures in the earth crust. Understand? So the knowledge of the structure of rock bodies is basic to the understanding of other aspects of geology. Understand? So the knowledge of the structure of a rock bodies. So the knowledge of structure of a rock bodies basic to the understanding, is basic to the fundamental or to understanding of other aspects of geology. So it is not easy to get the knowledge, to get the much awareness towards the structures of a rock formations. So the knowledge of structures of rock bodies is a basic to the understanding. It is a basic criteria to understanding or fundamental phenomena of other aspects of geology. Understand? So structural geology knowledge is of great importance. Understand? Structural geology knowledge is of great importance in applied fields of geology. So structural geology knowledge is of great importance in the applied fields of geology, such as groundwater hydrology, mining geology, and engineering geology, etc. So this structural geology knowledge is great importance or significance in the field of geology, such as what are the field-oriented branches of geology: groundwater hydrology, mineral exploration or mining geology, and engineering geology. These are the major cases where we can see the field-oriented or field knowledge. So in all these fields, it is essential to learn. In all these fields, like groundwater hydrology, mining geology, engineering geology, in all these fields, the structural geology knowledge is essential to learn. Understand? The occurrence of oil pools, the size and shape of ore bodies, and other important rock formations such as coal, limestone, and distribution of groundwater are very often controlled by geological structures. Yes, do you know? The occurrence of oil pool, oil and gas or petroleum. Understand? The size and shape of ore bodies. What is the shape and size of ore bodies? And other important rock formations. Other important rock formations such as coal, limestone, isn't it? And other important rock formations. And these are distribution of ground, even distribution of groundwater are very often controlled by are very often controlled by geological structures. So these geological structures are going to be controlled by the occurrence of oil pool. Understand? The important rock formations, coal, limestone, iron ore, manganese, chromium, like all these iron ore deposits or ore bodies, and even distribution of groundwater in the subsurface, below the subsurface, below ground, distribution of groundwater in the subsurface, all these oftenly controlled by geological structures. So field of engineering geology also a selection of sites for dams, bridges, other projects is based on the proper evaluation of foundation rocks. Have you know? Do you know? The field of engineering geology is a very highly, whatever the sectors which has widely developed in the recent days, the engineering geology. So the field of engineering geology also selection of site. So site selection, okay. Also selection of sites for dams, bridges, or even any other projects is based on a proper evolution of foundation rocks. So where should we select the site for construction of a dam or bridges or tunnel or road or whatever it is? The engineering geology is a purely construction. So whatever you need to construct, even if you want to construct a small house, before that you have to choose that soil. Is it the site for favorable to construct the construct the house or not? Isn't it? What type of soil it was there? Isn't it? So before going to construct a house, first you have to test the soil. Is it suitable or not? So if it is not suitable, what are the other alternatives we should like to adopt? Understand? So these are the ways which are going to be applied the geological knowledge, especially the structural geology knowledge is widely used in the various fields of geology. So like any project which is engaged by the engineering geology, like dam selection of site for dam. So if you want to construct a dam, what type of soils is best one to construct the dam? At what place, at which place we are going to construct the dam? Is it the soil is suitable or not? So why should we construct the dam? We should construct the dam to store the water, and wherever or whenever we need, accordingly we are going to supply from that source of water, isn't it? So that is why the major intention is to store the water, proper amount of water. How much amount of water is catchment area which is obtaining from the various sources, from the various places, and that water should be stored in that depressional zone. Accordingly we are going to utilize for the domestic purpose, for the irrigation purpose, for the industrial purpose, for the daily drinking purpose, isn't it? So from the various sectors, from that source we are going to supply. That is our major intention to store the to construct the dam. So the foundation stones, the foundation rock or foundation soil, various rock features which are going to be utilized in this. This is application of structural geology. So the structural geology knowledge is very essential in the other field of geology, mostly mining geology, groundwater hydrology, isn't it? Mostly, whatever the sectors which are going to be applied, in all these sectors, the structural geology knowledge is greatly utilized and useful. That is why the structural geology is also important with the other branches of geology. It's interlinked, it is connected to the other branches. This knowledge is very useful to other branches. So this is application of structural geology. Then structural geology and its relation to other branches of geology. Yes, just as I did in the firstly, so structural geology and its relation to the other branches of geology. Just now, as we see, the structural geology knowledge is greatly employed in the field of geological branches, like in the field of geology, like mining geology, groundwater hydrogeology, engineering geology, isn't it? So groundwater hydrology, mining geology, or mineral exploration, or engineering geology. So in these fields, the structural geology is not, no, structural geology knowledge is very essential. It is very necessary to practice. It is very necessary to employ this knowledge in the field of these branches. So that is why the structural geology and its relation to other branches of geology, it has a great significance in the other branches of field of geology mostly. So that is why it has been interconnected with the other branches. So the structural geology knowledge, it is going to be interconnect. It is going to be interconnect with the other branches. So generally, in geology, there are the number of branches are there. Each and every branch, it has their own significance, as well as that much of that branch knowledge or that individual knowledge can also be utilized in the other branches, isn't it? For example, if you want to study the petrology, first you should know the mineralogy. So what are the minerals? Why? Because petrology is study of rocks. So the rocks are composed by different types of minerals. Yes. So if you want to know about the petrology, or if you want to study about the petrology, before that, initially you should learn about the mineralogy, isn't it? Because it's the interlinking. Mineralogy is interlinking with the petrology. Like these are the several branches like this, which are going to be connected to the another branches in all the aspect. So this is structural geology and their major objectives and introduction parts, and whereas the methods of structural geology and applications of structural geology and its relation to the other branches, isn't it? In, in all these, so after completion of this unit, the student can able to explain the what are the primary structures, what are the secondary structures, what are the description of methods of geology, methods of structural geology, description of applications of structural geology, and structural geology and its relation to with other branches. So these are the knowledge we should able to learn or gain from this unit. So this is what we can say very clearly. The structural geology being a major one of the major branches of geology because it has some significance. Mostly, when you enter into the field, so what are the features of the land? Is it have what is the geographical features? It means is there any significant types are there? Any importance are there? So what are the exposures we can see on the land? So what is it? What are the lithological units? So first, what are the you need to study the rock bodies. Either the rock bodies belongs to igneous, sedimentary, or metamorphic, and is it having? Then the rock structures are having. Is they are having primary structures or are they having secondary structures? Is it what type of structures are there? And by seeing these structures, we could able to understand is it primary structure or secondary structure. So as we know, the primary structures are the structures which are formed during the formation of rock, during the depositional process of rock, if it is in the case of sedimentary. So emplacement, either through emplacement or crystallization in the case of igneous rocks. So all these things we can able to understand. So it is the major aim, the structural geology major aim is to understand the field. When you are entering into the field, it is necessary to understand. It is necessary to understand and interpretation or to represent interpreting interpretation. What is the shape, attitude? Is it small scale, large scale? If it is beyond the large, we can study under the tectonics, isn't it? So in all these ways, we can able to understand the major phenomena. So if the secondary structures are there, what type of forces which are resulted, isn't it? So is it may be shifted, it is maybe rotated, upliftment, tilted. So what forces it was there, how it became. So what are the why these rocks are getting this type of structures? Because of what pressure, what forces behind this. In all these aspects, we are very clearly able to understand. If you are be thorough in the structural geology, so we can able to understand when we are enter into the field. The field knowledge is very essence. It's a very great experience also because geology is nothing but field oriented. Mostly we can see in the whatever the attitudes of the rocks, we can see very clearly in the field. So in all these uh, variations, we can see the clear and suitable conditions of the rocks where it can able to understand. So this is a major structural geology. Then if you have any doubts, you can ask. I'm here to explain. So by completion of this unit, so you should able to understand what are the major objectives of structural geology. The introduction part, primary structures, what are the primary structures, what are the secondary structures, what are the major methods of structural geology, so applications of structural geology, and structural geology and its relation to the other branches, where should we mostly employ this knowledge in other field of sectors. So like in several units we are going to be able to understand by studying this. So this is very great importance in the geological approach of mostly in the field oriented. Okay, thank you. Thank you. My class is over. Signing off. Sudhakar.